Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Produce Moms Podcast, and my name is Lori Taylor. I love our show because we bring together some of the most amazing innovators, the most passionate people dedicated to making the world a better place through the fresh produce supply chain. And today we are welcoming two gentlemen from the company Yumbrella. Yumbrella, they are known as Covered by Fresh. This is a all natural coating that you put on your fresh produce, and it extends the shelf life. We're going to learn way more about it today from our guests. We're welcoming Andy Tudor. He is the business development and marketing director at Yumbrella. And then we are also welcoming Seth Shumate. He is one of the co-founders and the CEO of Yumbrella. So gentlemen, it's great to have you here. Seth, we'll start with you. Say hello. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having us. My background, I'm a material science by trade. My previous companies have been focused on solar energy startups. So the last one was doing a coating, funnily enough, for solar panels and LED street lighting to make them more efficient. So we sold LED streetlights to GE and Philips, and just recently got bought out by another company that does coatings for solar glass in the solar industry trade. So sustainability is kind of in my career blood, so to speak. And being in the coating space is not too different, coating apples than coating glass. So
yeah, that's amazing. And I love how your background, the destiny always gets us where we're meant to be. It's kind of like this has always been part of your plan, so to say. And I look forward today, Seth, learning more about how you, how that work history led you to all of the innovation with Yumbrella. It's going to be a great show. Andy, please say hello. Tell us a little bit more about your background and your current role.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My background is I grew up in the Yakima Valley on an apple and grape farm. After college, I decided I wanted to focus more towards the sales and marketing, specifically on Northwest products, which apples and pears, cherries, and some blueberries. 3 decades of sales and marketing at the urging of some close friends. In 2020, they said, hey, you've spent a lot of time on airplanes and met a lot of growers and spent a lot of time seeing a lot of things. Maybe you should open a consulting business. And I did in 2020. And Seth called me up and became a client. And the rest is a history that we're trying to make.
That's great. All right. So Seth, let's dive into the journey of your founder story with Yumbrella. How did this all get started?
Yeah, sure. So I guess first I'd like to say, kind of what is Yumbrella besides the name Yumbrella? Well, it's a liquid that can get sprayed onto the surface of apples, and once it dries, it's sort of a protective layer that's maybe 1/4000th the weight of an apple, and it extends shelf life. It's transparent; you can hardly notice it, and this is what's most important to me, is that what sets us apart from wax or other types of coatings in the space is that in just 2 seconds it dissolves away under running water. So that's really important for me to get across. And how we started, I was in Beirut, Lebanon, and because of my startup experience before, I was advising startups in an agricultural technology accelerator program, and I met these guys that were working on this coating for apples. I didn't really know how it was going to be implemented yet. They just thought it could change the space in Lebanon. And so the way that started was that my co-founder, Ricardo Celebos, he was taking a cab ride from school back home. The cab driver was an apple farmer, and the apple farmer was complaining that he had to throw his apples on the ground that year because cold storage is too expensive. And if you know about Lebanon, then electricity rates there are higher than they are in Hawaii because they have to import all their fuel to
Wow.
generate electricity.
Sure.
So this apple farmer was complaining to him that you scientists should do something about this, invent something. And that got my friend to thinking. He co-opted his pharmacology buddy, and about a month later, he was looking at a casserole dish in his kitchen and noticed a film on the top surface. And he thought, well, why don't we use that film to, coat apples with it, so it lowers the oxygen level and protects the apple for longer. And so that's what they did for the next year and a half. They got to a point where the coating was ready to be trialed with and validated by a major packer in Washington State. So this guy from Lebanon left the country for the first time, flew out to Washington State, did this sort of manual coating of apples, and the results were great. So I joined the company a little bit before that. We got funding from Döhler Group, which is a natural food ingredients company, and Maersk Growth, which represents the shipping company. And for the next 2 years, we were working on industrializing and scaling up the recipe so that it could be produced on a global level. And that's when we found Andy, and he's been an angel and knows everyone in the Apple space. So it's been a pleasure to work with him.
Oh, I love that. Well, Andy, with all of your deep knowledge and connections with the Apple industry, I'd love to ask you this question. Why is Yumbrella important for farmers and, the supply chain alike? Like, why does this matter to the end consumer even?
Well, starts with my mentor in the industry, Gary Remy, who I believe is the most brilliant mind in the Apple industry. And he taught me early on that anytime you analyze any product or process or anything you do, you have to start at the farm. And you have to check that box first. So when I started working with Yumbrella, doing some testing on my own, I saw the effect on apples, on storage life, on less decay, and maintaining the condition of it. So rather than running with this great story to consumers and retailers and saying, we've got this great product, it has to make sense to the grower or packer, because that's where things start. So number one, is it a tool or is it a burden? Okay, and through testing ourselves and then with independent warehouse growers, they checked that box and they said, this is a tool for us. This is great. This helps us manage our inventories. It helps us plan better for what we're doing. At the end of the day, it delivers a apple just as it came off the packing line to the consumer. So there's no degradation over the supply chain. So we check that box with the grower. Then for the retailers, our benefit there? Well, certainly, because now if they're buying 40 pounds of apples, they're not losing 30% to weight reduction because we're slowing the respiration of the fruit down, and therefore it's not dehydrating at retail. So it's a better product to that. And at the end of the day, it's handed to the consumer, and they have a apple that's much more similar as it came off the tree to them through the supply chain. So checking those three boxes was very important. And starting with the grower packer, the first one is key. Otherwise, there's really no sense in progressing the process any further.
Sure. Well, so Andy, how does Yumbrella keep the apples and produce fresh?
It's a coating that we apply on the apple, similar to a process where on conventional fruit you would apply wax. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother podcast.
I know. People that always freaks people out, but I guess it's a good opportunity for me to say we've got a whole blog dedicated to that on theproducemoms.com. And this is the same type of food grade wax that you see on, like, it coats M&Ms, it's on your dental floss, and it's on most of your conventional apples. There's some cucumbers that carry it, and so on and so forth. So with that, Andy, carry on.
Okay. So it's applied in line on the packing before the fruit goes through the sorting tables and ultimately is put into either bulk packages or consumer packages and shipped out through the distribution trucks to distribution centers and then to the stores. And what the coating does is it basically puts the apple like it's back in a controlled atmosphere storage. If you're breathing, it'd be like being a well-trained athlete. You would respirate at a much slower rate of exertion. And so covering the apple in that atmosphere and slowing it down, the shelf life is greatly extended. It kind of locks in the condition of the fruit, whatever it was at the time of application.
Right.
So therefore, through distribution, we're not going to have degradation.
And, people don't like to think about coatings and things like, any sort of additives to their fresh produce. But
right.
I'd like to emphasize to folks, similar to what Seth was saying at his introductory remarks, this is a completely natural product, correct, Andy?
That is correct. A matter of fact, in presenting it to a major retailer and talking about it, their comment was after tasting the fruit saying, "No, there's no odor, there's no taste, and the fruit is conditioned. It's very juicy and it's very firm. This is organic on organic. I love this."
Yeah.
And so that really resonates with us well.
Sure. Well, and I know too, from our pre-show conversation, you were mentioning this is a completely water soluble product line as well, meaning very easy to wash off, right?
Yeah, that's right. About a year and a half ago, our recipe took about 45 seconds to wash off, and now it just kind of dissolves underwater. So that's really something that we've been working on quite a lot. And I think you're right to say, as a consumer, when I was 32, I found out that apples had wax. I had no idea before. And the people that buy organic apples, they say, well, I just didn't know what's in wax. I don't want to eat it. And so, why should I impose that with my coating? With our coating, you could just wash it off. So there's nothing left except the apple as it's intended to be eaten.
Right. Okay. So Seth, I'd love to stick the mic with you for a minute and let's talk a little bit deeper about the sustainability story. How is Yumbrella a sustainable solution for agriculture?
Yeah. So, some people think when they hear sustainability that, oh gosh, this is going to be more expensive. But to me, the best inventions are ones that either produce or save more energy than is needed to implement them. So solar panels, for example, it takes about a year to pay off the energy input into making them. Mm-hmm. And then they can produce energy for 30 years. So that's a 30x multiplier. For our coating, it's about 150x. So the payback there is very, very fast. Mm-hmm. So that's because we don't have to throw away apples anymore as much as they used to. So each apple takes its own water, takes its own energy, takes its own labor, and since they don't have to throw away apples as much, then they don't have to repackage them. When they repackage them, they use new boxes, new materials. That gets avoided as well. So we're not even counting that in the 150x energy payback, let's say.
Sure. And you have a really, you have a great page on your website, yumbrella.com. When you click on the How It Works tabs, there's a fantastic graphic that is titled Why Sustainability is Critical. And it talks about produce waste. On your site, you call out, this is a tremendous issue, folks. Sometimes I don't know if we've ever quantified it with a dollar amount the way the Yumbrella site does. We often will talk about how in the United States, around 40% of what is grown actually ends up in the garbage, in terms of fruits and vegetables, with the lion's share of that waste occurring at the household level. Now let's talk a little bit more about how they present it on the Yumbrella site. Produce waste is $1 trillion problem. And you've broken it down from developed and developing countries and how sustainability looks different, and then how Yumbrella is a solution for all. So Seth, would you like to kind of shed some light on that and explain to folks this How It Works concept and the sustainability graphic that I'm referencing?
Right. So in America, where most food waste will happen either at retail or at the consumer's home, and this happens because, at the consumer's home because, well, let's say your apple just tastes tired. You're not going to eat the other 4 that you just bought. So we have no problem here throwing those away. Whereas in places like Lebanon, if you get food in your house, it is downright shame to waste any of it. So, but they don't have the technologies like cold storage, controlled atmosphere, to maintain freshness. And that's where our technology was born. So we envision Yumbrella as being a truly global solution. And because the energy payback is so extraordinary, then that also means that it's going to be affordable for smallholder farmers up to big packing groups in the United States.
Thank you. So well said. So Andy, I'd like to bring the mic back to you now, especially with your lens on business development and marketing. When a consumer purchases a product, say an apple, that is coated with Yumbrella, will they be able to, I want to make sure that folks know, will they even know? Like, will they know that the Yumbrella is even on the apple? Is there a taste? Is there a smell when you're washing it off? Can you see it come off? Like, what does the user experience look like when they encounter an apple that's coated with Yumbrella or any produce item?
That's a great question. And I guess part of that I would ask a question back is, how would we do that? We don't really know how to communicate that with the consumer. And number one, I guess, is it necessary to? I mean, they're getting a better product that's completely safe. It's organic. It's common food ingredients. Is that going to be important to them to know that it's on there and it is washable? People wash their produce.
I mean, I would say that the majority of consumers, the answer to that is no. Like, most people don't even know that apples are waxed, and then if they just don't think about it. So I don't know. I don't know if you were asking me that question or not, but that's my instinct as someone who, is at the helm of probably one of the most dynamic communities on the entire internet that's fully focused on fruits and vegetables. I think that there is a lack of awareness, potentially, a lack of priority. We've got a million things to worry about. Like, that's not one of them. But when you say, like, do you know that if this is on your food or not? I mean, I do think transparency is important.
Yeah. And I think, one forum that's perfect for that is your podcast.
Right.
And our website has a lot of information on it. But what we've heard from people is that consumers will spend less than 1 second looking at an information placard on a display. And so we think that Yumbrella is a very exciting story to tell. Its sustainability aspects, its washability, and also the fact that you're just going to get a better tasting piece of fruit, which means that you're going to wind up throwing away less of what you actually buy.
Sure.
All of these are super positive, and we love telling the story.
Yeah, that's great. So is there any sort of, will the retailers be touting if the apples have Yumbrella on them or no? Or to be determined?
Yes, I think it's entirely, up to them, and, they know their consumer base, and if messaging is important to them, then they would certainly address that with them. Looking at it from our standpoint, we really don't have an agenda to be posted everywhere. Yumbrella is this and Yumbrella is that. We don't have an ego or an agenda to do that as a company. What we want to do is the right thing for the right reasons.
Right.
And as Seth mentioned earlier, and you were covering on, a multiple of sustainability and different things as well. So that's really where we lie with it. We're not after recognition. We'd sure like to expand our reach internationally and nationally as far as helping growers. And, that's more the goal.
Right. But you're really focused on the mission and just creating that impact for the end consumer, more so than making sure that they know exactly how that, exactly what Yumbrella is. But I completely agree with what Seth said. I mean, you got to come on to platforms, podcasts like this, tell your story. Your website's really well done. So those are all examples of ways where it's not like you're hiding anything. It's just a matter of whether or not consumers are going to find it or even know. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, gentlemen, this has been a wonderful overview and introduction for me in terms of what your amazing brand and product is all about. So congratulations. Seth, I didn't ask you this. How long has Yumbrella been around? What's the timeline here? When did this all start?
So the casserole dish and the cab ride happened in March of 2017.
Wow. Okay. And here we are. And you've got you've got grower partners. You said you have placement right now in Lebanon and in the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Well, best days ahead, onward and upward. I wish you more growth and continued success from me and everyone at the Produce Moms. It's been fantastic having these two gentlemen on our show. As a reminder, folks, you can visit yumbrella.com, YUMBRELLA.com to learn more about this amazing technology and this great solution that the team at Yumbrella has made for us all. So with that, gentlemen, you get the final words. So Andy, we'll start with you, and then Seth, we'll have you sign us off from the show. But please, any closing remarks you have or final thoughts that you have for our listeners?
Certainly. Being in business development and marketing, I've always, tracked the numbers, right? And apple consumption has been flat for about as long as I've been in the business. And I think we all recognize the only growth has been in the organic category. And so it's very exciting to be able to deliver the organic grower's promise to the organic consumer with using Yumbrella to cover that supply chain degradation that we were talking about earlier on it. And to me, when the consumer buys 5 apples and they get them home, and by the end of the week, all 5 are still good, and they've consumed that fruit, and the next time they go shopping, it's like, well, I think I'll buy 7 since those were crunchy last time, and lasted over a week for me. And if we can grow the category, grow consumption, we've got a healthy product that we're offering people. It's a win for everybody, from the growers to the consumers.
Thank you, Andy. And Seth, closing remarks and the sign off of today's show, please.
Well, I don't have any improvements on what Andy just said, but I do want to thank you and your listeners for having us as part of your community. And feel free to send us any thoughts that you might have or feedback, and we'll definitely read it.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to Lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.